not even close to what was going on. In fact, the Da Vinci Vitruvian Man. You've probably seen this before. By the way, interesting theory. It's a self-portrait of Da Vinci himself. Kind of interesting. But the question is, can you draw a square and a circle around the man? And this was his solution to that. It was an interesting puzzle. But at the same time, he's not the only one that was doing this. There are other contemporaries that he knew that were also trying to solve the same kind of puzzle, and so there's similarities between his work and others. But he's also, in his notes, drawing dissected arms and body parts and brain parts and so on. Notice Descartes is doing the same thing, and we see that in the anatomy lesson of Dr. Tulip. We can go here. Break. Okay, broke. Let's try this. So I'll just leave it like this. This is a Rembrandt, and it's called the Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Tulip. This is Dr. Tulip. Yes, by the way, he's the one that made tulips famous or important thing in the Netherlands. He was fond of them and basically started making them a fad. And of course, we've got tulips all over the place, named after Dr. Tulip. But we even know who this individual was. By the way, he was a criminal that had been executed that day. Dr. Tulip had paid the executioner for the body to bring it over for his anatomy lesson. It was actually a dinner show. So the guests that all came and paid their way had dinner while watching the dissection. And by the way, we also know that this arm is fake. Rembrandt painted that as if he had an arm, but that particular person had lost that arm because of a crime that the executioner chopped off his arm for the previous crime. So things got from bad to worse, obviously, for this character. But in any case, there's a whole book about that particular event. The reason it's interesting is Descartes' not in the picture, but Descartes was in the audience at that time. And so he's interested in dissection. In fact, he's dissecting animals himself. Was he also dissecting human beings? Not sure. It was illegal at the time. And the only way to do it was to hire somebody to go to a grave and dig it up after it's been buried, usually fresh if they can get it. So it's kind of grotty. Grotte? Gross. It's not, kosher. It's not, well, forget it. You know what I mean. I don't recommend it, especially today. Well, no, forget it. Get that all completely out of your mind. But back then, it was illegal. Duh. And that's a Homer expression, right? Homer, the philosopher. The Tao of Homer. Stop. Okay. That was me. I'm telling me to stop it. I'm having too much fun, actually. But what did Descartes find in the body that's so interesting? This is his actual picture. So pick whichever one you want here. This is Descartes' hand drawing of where he believes the soul is. Remember, Descartes believes that there's both a mind and a body. The mind is essentially the soul and non-physical. And why is it located there? That's the point where the body interconnects somehow with the soul. So that the soul is kind of driving the body as far as Descartes is concerned. And he found it in the pineal gland, and he basically was the one who apparently discovered the location of the pineal gland and the very top of the spine, and decided that was where he thought the soul interacted with the body. And you end up with really a kind of odd result from this. It's called the homunculi, or homunculus. Very strange, but you get the idea that there's a soul or a driver sitting in your head that's driving your body. I can't help it, but I think of if you've seen the movie Ready Player One. Yeah, that's I think, oh, that's kind of the individuals that are driving the avatars or whatever you want to call them. But the issue, of course, is the body is like a machine for Descartes, an automaton, but the humanity of it comes from the soul, and the soul is somehow located in the mind or the brain, and as a result, there's this interconnection between the mind and the body, where the mind is in control of the body. This is Descartes, right? Now, the problem, of course, is that how do you explain how this soul in this image is seeing the egg that the body is seeing, etc.? Well, they usually end up drawing another soul inside the soul, so that you've got a homunculus inside a homunculus, etc., and it's turtles all the way down. You end up then with this. It doesn't solve the problem, so you end up with a ridiculous theory, which is also referred to as Descartes' error, which is a book by Antonio Damasio, where he argues, no, the mind is actually the physical body of the brain, not a separate soul that's driving the brain, right? And that was Antonio Damasio's explanation. But Gilbert Ryle, who was another philosopher not too long ago, refers to it as the ghost in the machine. And that's in his book, The Concept of Mind. Can you see that back there? Gilbert Ryle, by the way, if you're interested in Daniel Dennett's thesis manager was Gilbert Ryle. So that's a connection. There's funny stories about Gilbert Ryle, too, in his book, and Daniel Dennett's book. All right. So let's go to Renee and talk about, as a child growing up, he was in school learning from the Jesuits. Moving on from there, though, he ended up joining the military. Never saw battle, but in the military was an officer. And according to A.C. Grayling, who's fun to read on this, was probably a spy for the Jesuits. Because if you follow his trail and you see where he was visiting places that had importance in future military conflict. And so in a sense, he was a spy that was checking up on these places and bringing the information back to the Jesuits, and that would lead it to the king. Well, eventually, The king died, and the new king was of a different mind politically, and so Descartes fled France and went to the Netherlands. The Netherlands is where he spent most of his adult life living. And why? One of the main reasons was the Netherlands was a country in between Catholic France and Protestant Germany. And as a result, they allowed both. So you could be either Catholic or Protestant, and that was okay if you were in the Netherlands. You could even be Jewish, actually, if you lived in the Netherlands, although there were some strict requirements on Jews in the Netherlands. We'll see that as an important factor in why Spinoza's family moves there and why Spinoza is his whole life in the Netherlands. But Descartes moves there and travels or moves his location frequently. Every 3 months was his rule. He would move from one place to another. And I'm convinced that it's because he was dissecting animals in his living room, or whatever you wanted to call that room. Imagine that back in the day when they didn't have dissectants? No. What do we call that when you clean stuff? Disinfectants, thank you. So that you clean the area up and everything. If you're just getting blood all over your furniture and all kinds of gore and stuff, and you're not really cleaning up very well, I think 3 months is really kind of amazing that you'd stay there that long. So that's my thinking, that he's dissecting animals to study them, and as a result, he's got to constantly keep moving. But the idea is that he's moving because he's afraid. He doesn't want people to know where he is, because he's afraid that his ideas are going to get him into trouble with the authorities. Maybe, maybe not, right? I would argue even that he really thought that the body was a complete machine, including the brain, and that we really didn't need souls as an explanation for things. But he threw that in, the ghost in the machine, primarily to make sure that the church didn't think that he was giving up on the soul. Right? But when you look at his philosophy, the soul doesn't really have anything to do. It's kind of just sitting in there in the driver's seat, driving things around. But the body has all these mechanisms and things that enable everything to work and so on. So the body doesn't really need a soul, as far as Descartes is concerned. So there are people that are concerned that he was maybe not as religious as he seemed, but he was defending himself to make sure that he never ended up being tortured or persecuted for his theories. Other interesting thing is, while he was a spy for the Jesuits, he was also encouraged to study secret societies. And so there's a lot of people think he was actually a member of secret societies himself, but the theory that you get from A.C. Grayling is that he was a spying on the secret society, so he wasn't really a member because he was interested as a member. He was instead spying on the secret society to try to relay the information to his boss. It was probably Cardinal Richelieu, maybe. In any case, interesting guy. Short, 5 foot 1 inch tall, not very tall. Considered to be pretty ugly by most people that knew him, and irascible. He was irascible. So that's kind of interesting. He did have a daughter out of wedlock, and his daughter's name was Francine, and she died when she was 5 years old, his heart was broken by her loss. And so he famously made a doll to look like Francine, and the doll was very scary. I'm thinking Chucky, that kind of scary, because like the eyes moved and the doll moved and things. He had gears in the doll so that he could make it move. scared the crap out of people, so they killed the doll. People got a hold of the doll and they destroyed the doll. It's odd little story, right? His writings. What did he write? We want to look at I hope I have at least one link to